How wonderful it is to be with you all in this beloved community. So as I said earlier, the theme for the month is the eyes have it. And what came to me, and we always create these topics a couple of months in advance. And I know those of us who speak, we go within and we ask what wants to be revealed here. And what came to me was the better to see you with, my dear. So we all know that comes from the nursery story, the Little Red Riding Hood, Mother Goose, Little Red Riding Hood. And honestly, when I was sitting and thinking about it yesterday, I thought, wow, what a strange story to have come up, because really and truly, it's a very gory story when you stop to think about it. So I was sitting with it and going, what does that mean? Because what I want to convey today, or what Spirit wants to say through me, as far as I understand right now, is that we want to walk by faith, not by sight. And when we say not by sight, we're talking about human sight. We're talking about our small self perception. We want to walk by faith, by that deeper knowingness, or we might say at Agape, we want to walk by vision. We want to be pulled from within. And we want to walk in the knowingness. It actually goes beyond faith to a deep knowingness that everything is working together for good, that everybody we see is divine, that we are divine, that the world around us, as chaotic as it looks, as confusing as it looks, that there's a purpose for all of this, and that God's activity is happening everywhere. One of the principles of Agape is the Omni activity of pure spirit. We've all heard omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. We've heard those three omnis. And then Reverend Michael added omni-active, which I love. And actually what I add to that is omni-loving, because I believe that Spirit is active everywhere. And I know that Spirit is loving all of its creation ever and always. And so can I, in the midst of anything, can I, in the midst of perceiving anyone, including myself, see the activity of Spirit taking place? So that's what I'm about today. So it means that we live by the highest vision rather than being pulled and tugged by the world around us. Because we know that the majority, we talk about majority rule, but majority kind of leads to a life of mediocrity, honestly, because we want to be ruled by the one. We want to be ruled by the one presence, the one power, the one life. To be one with the infinite, is that's unanimous. It comes from the word one. Unanimous comes from the word one. And so when we're coming from that place of oneness, we're in a state of unanimity, actually. So it goes way beyond majority. It goes beyond what the world says. It goes beyond what we see in the news. And it goes beyond what we hear in the marketplace. It goes beyond what we've been taught in schools, lots of us. It goes beyond religiosity. It goes beyond all of that stuff to that deep inner awareness of who and what we are. So, it's easy to buy into the predominant thought forms of the day. It's very easy to do that, especially if we tap into the news very often. It's very easy to buy into ain't it awful kind of consciousness. I've been noticing all the news about Afghanistan now, and about withdrawing the troops from Afghanistan and how terrible it is and da-da-da-da. And what we are tasked with when we see things like that, or when we see episodes or instances of injustice of any kind, or oppression, or poverty, or homelessness, whatever it is, we're tasked with seeing rightly, with seeing from a place of inner vision, walking by faith, trusting and knowing there's something greater going on here. So today the call is to live by vision, because when we tap into the highest vision, something happens within us. There's a knowingness, our intuitive faculty is opened up, and we're guided by insight rather than eyesight. So what does this have to do with Little Red Riding Hood? So I'm going to give you a real quick what came to me and then kind of move on, because anyway, what the heck. So I'm just going to look at one part of that, and the idea that the wolf disguised himself or herself, themself, whatever. The wolf was disguised as the grandma in order to trick Red Riding Hood. So I looked at that and I looked at what is that metaphysically or mystically? What does that represent? And what came to me, and we could all have a really fun dialogue around this because I'm sure you all would have other things to say about it, but it came to me that it can represent the wolf can represent the small self, the ego self, what Sue Morter calls the protective self. It's that part of us that's felt hurt, harmed, endangered, not respected, unseen, unloved, and oftentimes loves to play the victim. Have you ever loved to play the victim? There was a time in my life when I thrived on being the victim, because there seemed to be a lot of adrenaline going on around that. But so I was seeing the wolf as being that small part of the self. And what that wolf wants to do is it wants to destroy our innocence, so to speak. I was seeing Red Riding Hood as being kind of an innocent. It wants to destroy our innocence. And by our innocence, I mean that place of trust that we have in life, that place where we always feel safe and secure and protected, that place in us of the I am presence that is always making itself known if we're listening, when we're listening. So it's like the wolf wants to devour that part of us because, and here's the thing with the ego self, the protective self, the fear with that part of us is that if the spiritual self, if the divine self emerges and takes over, it will die, meaning the small self will die. And so, of course, it wants to devour us. It wants to keep that spirit self down. And it can be sly and tricky, I'm telling you. Sometimes it can even use spirituality, to for its own purposes. I don't know if you've heard, we used to talk a lot, both at Agape and when I was in the convent too, about spiritual pride, becoming proud about your spiritual unfoldment, even being attached to that. There can so many ways that the ego can trick us. But anyway, the point is that it wants to devour us. And so what happens is when we buy into the machinations of the ego self, when we buy into what it's trying to tell us, then what we're doing is we have, in a sense, crucified that divine self that we are. We have sacrificed that divine self. And it relegates that divine self to a place of mediocrity. It relegates that divine self to second place. I can use you. The ego can use my spirituality. Oftentimes, by the way, when people begin on the spiritual path, what might happen is the ego can try to use the spirituality, the spiritual path for its own purposes. That's a whole other talk. Sometimes when we get so much into I want to manifest things, that's ego wanting to manifest things. Until we get to that place of surrender, I'm surrendered to the spirit. That's not where I want to go with this, though. Okay, so where I want to go now is that I want to look at three things. I want to look at how do I see myself? How do I see others? How do I see the world around me? And how can I shift those perceptions? So how do I see myself? And I think that oftentimes how I see myself might be at the root of how I misperceive others and misperceive the world around me. Because when I really perceive myself as divine, then I can't help but perceiving others and the world around me differently. So here's the thing. How do I know if I'm in a place of misperception around who and what I am? So I was being with this, and I know all of the ways in the past that I have been in misperception, that I have been seeing myself incorrectly, that I've been seeing with limited view, limited eyesight, human eyesight, am I comparing myself to others? Am I finding the need to compare? Am I condemning myself? Do I feel the need to compete with others? I have to be just as good as other people. I have to prove myself. Do I deflect compliments? You know, this is one I've had to work on a lot. When people say, give you a compliment, can you just say thank you? You know, like they do in Morocco. It's true, thank you. You know, that's what they say in Morocco. It's true, thank you, because they know who they are. You know, so when I receive a compliment, can I just accept that and say thank you? Can I do I have to continually shame myself, blame myself, unforgiveness? Am I living in a place of unforgiveness? I've done this horrible thing. I can't let go of it. These are just some of the symptoms of not loving myself, of not seeing myself with the eyes of the divine, because that's what it's about today. So how do I correct those misperceptions? You know, and for me too, I have to say, and some of you might, having been raised in other religious traditions, and me being raised in a Catholic tradition and then in the convent, you know, the whole idea of humility was more about a lack of self-worth than it was real humility. So how many of us think we aren't worthy? You know, I can't do this, that, or the next thing. And we give ourselves all these human reasons rather than looking at, who am I really? I want you to ask yourself, meditate on, who am I really? Who am I? That's a great meditation. What am I? That's an even more powerful question for me. What am I? Because as we talk about it at Agape, the what of us is divine. The who of us is the person, the way it shows up personality wise. I know in some traditions and by some teachers it's spoken differently. That's the way we've been looking at it here at Agape. So can I ask myself those questions? Who am I really? What am I really? And can I come into a place of non-resistance and compassion for myself? That's what I'm inviting you into today, where your own self is concerned. Can you be non-resistant, first of all, to all of those ways that perhaps you put yourself down? Don't resist them, just notice them. You know, the more you resist them, you know what we say, what we resist persists. The more I resist them, the more they're going to persist. So just don't resist. And can you be compassionate with yourself? It's as if, can you imagine yourself as as a loving grandparent to your little self, to your child self, to that part of you that puts yourself down, that feels not enough? Can you place yourself in that? You know, in Ho'oponopono, that's one of the ways that Dr. Hugh Lin works with it. You know, I love you. It's your divine self, loving that little child in you, loving that self in you that's made mistakes. And perhaps some of those mistakes you think are unforgivable. Nothing's unforgivable. All of us have done the best we could at every single moment. So when I'm looking at, do I see myself correctly? Am I perceiving myself? Am I being compassionate? Am I being forgiving? Am I being non-resistant to the stuff that comes up so that it can come up and pass? It came up to pass. It wasn't meant to stay there. And the more I try to push it down, the more it's going to be there, because I just keep concretizing it by pushing it down. So it's just open to it. Be receptive, be open, be non-resistant, and come back to a place of loving yourself. And if you need help with that, you know, call a prayer partner, see a practitioner, read a spiritual reading that will uplift you, that will bring you to that place. This is all discipline, folks. This all takes time. This all takes discipline of our inner and our outer senses. So then how do I view others? How am I looking at others? Am I labeling others? You know, do I see others from a certain perspective? It was so interesting. I've been reading Alchemy by Paul Selig, and I just love the way spirit works, because here I'm giving this talk today about seeing, perceiving, and I haven't seen a lot in the book about that, indirectly, yes. But so yesterday, the one paragraph that's in front of me is a paragraph where he's talking about the way we see others. You know, what are the descriptors that we give to others? Am I calling someone the young woman, the beggar, the old man, the thief, the politician, In my case, I'm having all this work done on my place, since it's been flooded. Am I looking at them as the work crew? Is that all they are, the work crew? You know, the insurance adjuster, and boy, is there a lot of grace consciousness around that. There's, how am I perceiving others? Do I look at their title and judge them by that? Or do I have the inner perception to see beyond their job, to see beyond the way they show up in the world, to see the divine within them? Do I judge people because they aren't playing by my rules of life? I always love where Edwin Gaines talks about that, she'll say, I get upset with people because they're not playing by the rule book of Edwin. We all have a certain rule book within us we grew up with, and of course, my job for myself is to keep letting go of that rule book. People don't have to live up to my expectations. And, for most of us, that's a piece of work to let go of that. Can I let go of that? And can I just see who they are as divine beings of love, of light? So I invite you to, just as you would be non-resistant and compassionate to yourself, be compassionate to others, be non-resistant to others, live with an undefended heart, the open heart of the infinite that has no need to defend. There's nothing to defend here because your life is the life of God. You are spirit incarnate. You can't be hurt, harmed, or endangered by anyone or anything. And does that mean, am I saying that there hasn't been physical abuse sometimes, that there hasn't been emotional abuse sometimes, that there hasn't been mental abuse sometimes? No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that there's that divine essence in all of us that can never and has never been hurt, harmed, endangered in any way, shape, or form. And the more we start to realize who we are, who am I as a divine being, then we get in touch with that. Who I am as a divine being, here's the deal, becomes more real than my old ideas of myself. You see, that becomes more real to me. The invisible world becomes more real. And when I can see that in myself, I can see that in others more clearly as well. And so how is my perception of others? Am I willing to forgive others? Has there been anyone who has done something to me, to you, that has been unforgivable? Anybody who has done something to your family, to your race, to your gender? Has there been anybody who's done something that is so unforgivable? And here's the thing, in God, there's no need for forgiveness because in God doesn't even behold iniquity. It says that somewhere in the Bible. But God doesn't even behold iniquity. God only knows itself. So when I'm in that place of knowing myself as a God being and of perceiving with divine insight, the eye of God looking through my eye, then I can forgive. I can let go. And we all know that forgiving someone else is a greater service to ourselves than it is to the other person even. We all know this. That the other person's going about their lives. I used to think when I was much, much younger, that if I didn't forgive them, that would be a form of punishment for them. No, it's a form of punishment for myself. So can I be forgiving to others? Can I be loving to others? Can I do as Howard Thurman says? Can I accept others, love them right where they are, whatever they're doing, and at the same time see rightly, see as God sees the perfection that they are. See them as their divine self are. That was a very bad sentence. Anyway, can I do both of those at the same time? Totally accept them and see the highest truth. That's what a practitioner does. That's what a minister in our teaching does. We see you right where you are. We accept you. We love you. We adore you as the divine, and we hear the stuff that comes to us, and at the same time, we're knowing truth. When I see somebody on the street that that my human self might judge, for example, perhaps they look like they're not healthy. Perhaps it's someone that's homeless, or as we used to say at Agape, homebound. Perhaps it's somebody that's screaming and yelling or being unkind to someone else. Can I love them? Can I see the divine in that person? It doesn't mean I condone behavior. It means I love their essence. Because you see, the more we heap judgment upon other people, the more we heap judgment upon other people, and oftentimes we do it a lot with people we love the most and who we're closest to. But when I'm doing that, that does not do anything to lift them up. What I'm called to do, what you're called to do, because you're on this call, because you're at Agape, what we are called to do is to lift others up by our perception. And you don't have to go around saying anything. You don't have to go around telling them bless you or whatever. Just see the truth as you're walking down the street, as you're driving your car. That's a practice I've been doing for years and years. Even in the convent, we were taught, to behold the Christ in others. And so it's been a practice for many, many years to keep my heart open to see others. And it's a lifelong practice, I'm telling you. It can still be challenging. So how I see myself, how I see others, and how do I view the world? Does the chaos, the injustice, the poverty, the violence throw me into a tailspin and cause me great distress? Can it ruin my day if I see something that's I judge to be violent, cruel, unpeaceful, unloving, chaotic, unjust? One of my friends was telling me recently that she's reading this book, How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going. And I'm thinking that might be a good book for us to look at Agape Bay Area. I think I think it's for leaders. I'm not sure if it's for church leaders or what, but how do I lead when I don't know where I'm going? In other words, our world is in such chaos right now. It really is. And so we can get pulled, we can get dragged down by that. I've said this many, many times, we can absolutely work, for social justice and be out in the world doing that. However, don't get stuck. Don't get stuck into doing it from a place of anger. Get stuck from doing it in a place of love, opening your heart, loving the world. And so how do we remedy this particular symptom? Well, first of all, do I get so opinionated, that I'm stuck in my opinion, that I can't even hear them? Do you hear what I'm saying? The us and them mentality, that I can't even, and I can think of ways that I could certainly grow in that area, because there's certain things I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear that opinion. And maybe what's wrong with it? If I'm really strong in who I am, in my own truth, and I'm talking about ultimate truth, I'm not talking about facts of the world. If I'm really strong in my truth, nothing can sway me. Nothing can sway me. I'm always going to be, my small self wanted to say on the side of right, but what's right in the world? Who knows? Right, what I believe is right now is the chaos that's happening because something's being birthed here. A new world is being birthed here. A new vibration is being called forth here. And yes, it's chaotic, and yes, it's confusing. And yes, it looks pretty terrible sometimes. And we are called to see with the eyes of God. In other words, let my eyes be the eyes of the divine. How is spirit viewing this? Spirit has no judgment. To spirit, it just is. And to the I am of each one of us, it just is. I am. In the midst of it, I am. And so by being this, by perceiving this way, by seeing the highest vision for the world, for yourself, for others, by tapping into that high vision, by walking by faith, you are a beneficial presence on the planet. You bring a frequency to the planet, or to the world, I should say, that lifts the world, that lifts the collective consciousness. And sometimes that's just so, I've said this so many times, it's so sometimes easy to say and hard to grasp what a difference each one of us makes, because we absolutely do. And I've often said, it's even goes beyond throwing a rock in the lake and seeing it ripple out, because the reality is as Ernest Holmes said, what's known in one place in consciousness is known everywhere in consciousness. And what I know is it's simultaneous. It's happening all at once, right now, if you're catching that. So even all of us coming together, being this place in consciousness, something's happening, something's shifting in the world. And then when you think of all the other spiritual communities, spiritual centers, churches, synagogues, mosques, and so forth, that are coming together at the same time, imagine that vibration being multiplied even, and what's happening on the world in the world right now. The reason I keep coming back to the word world is because Reverend Michael talks about the world as the world of effects as we see it. And so when I'm saying world, that's what I'm talking about, those effects that we see. And our consciousness can cut through, slice through those effects to where we bring truth to the world through our sight, our inner sight. So cultivate that inner sight. You know, and you might say, well, how do I do that? How do I cultivate that inner sight? And one ideal way of doing it is through our agape spiritual practice of visioning, you know. And visioning isn't some magical thing that creates all kinds of manifestations, although it does, but that's not the point of visioning. The point of visioning is to really identify ourselves as the divine. That's what we do when many of you on this call have taken the visioning class. In fact, I would say most of you have taken it when I look at the names. And so you know that what we do at the beginning of visioning is we come into that place of oneness, getting anchored in the oneness, and then knowing that that oneness is the love of God. And then from that place, we can ask ourselves, what's the highest vision for my life? What's the highest vision for that person that I'm seeing over there that is disturbing to me, that's doing something that I think is wrong, that's doing something that I think is unjust? What's the highest vision for that person? You can do it in an instant after you've practiced for a while. Just go into that place of oneness, open your heart. What's the highest vision? What's the highest vision for Mother Earth and for the world? What's the highest vision? That's a powerful visioning right there. What do you see when you tap into that? And see, when we vision, the reason we get so anchored in that place of oneness and unconditional love is because that's the field that from which the vision is generated. That the vision just pops up from that place. It emerges from that place. And it may not be visual. It may, it may be sounds. It may be a feeling tone. It may be nothing at all. But the point is, when you are opening yourself to God's vision, to the way God sees, then something happens. You are changed. You're changed. When I vision, I'm changed. I'm not, and yes, things around me change as well. But the important thing is I'm making the change. And that's the important thing about spiritual growth and unfoldment. It's the important thing about we live our lives. We change. We don't try to rearrange the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. We don't try to do that. What we do is we turn within. We turn within and get to the essence of things. And we see rightly. And we walk by faith. And when you do this over and over and over and over again, when you are disciplined and consistent in your practice, something happens. You become different. And then when you become different, things around you start to become different, and you start to see everything differently, and people notice. And I know many of you have experienced this. People notice you're different. You're different than the average person. Not that the average person isn't wonderful, but there's a glow about you. How many of you have been told that there's a glow about you, or there's something special about you? They can't quite figure out what it is, but you know what it is. It's spirit using you. And see, you don't get puffed up or egotistical about it, because you know that it's God moving through me. It's not my little human self that's doing anything here. And that's what I would love for every person on this planet, because it just makes life so much easier, when I can be non-resistant, when I can be compassionate, when I can be loving. It's living by grace. And it says in scripture, the grace of God is my sufficiency in everything. It is our sufficiency. It is our sufficiency. What we start to do is we start to notice, and we call it synchronicity. We start to notice synchronistic things happening. We start to notice uh, things coming together for our good in a way that we couldn't even imagine, because we can't see all of the possibilities that Spirit has for us. So we surrender, we go to that place within, we say, God, let my eyes be your eyes. Let me, see through my eyes. We are here on this earth plane. Spirit is using us. Spirit is seeing through our eyes, speaking through our mouth, hearing through our ears, walking through our feet, servicing with our hands, just all of those ways that Spirit shows up. We make ourselves available, and then as the Ernest Holmes reading said, it's just that we let the law of God work it out. That aspect of God known as the law, it brings everything together in a beautiful way. One of the things that happened recently, I'm finally, I've just had a lot of work done on my space, and the owner of the flooring company that they're putting the flooring in, was he was upset one day because uh, somebody a previous person that he'd been doing a job for, wanted them to come back and to do some extra stuff, and out of the goodness of his heart he said yes, but he was a little irritated, and it also delayed the time he could come to my place. So he emailed me that, and we talked on the phone, and I said, I'm fine with that, because here's the thing, I knew that Spirit was working it out. I knew not to get in the middle of it. And he said, from the little I know of you, he said, I knew you'd be okay with it. He said, I'm not so okay with it because it's my company, but he said, I knew you'd be okay with it, which I love that he could see that, that he could see that I would be okay, because I trust that what some people call a higher power. I trust in a greater activity. I, in lots of moments, what I can perceive, I don't see specifics all the time, but what I perceive is the way that the law of God is working everything together for good in an absolutely perfect way. I can feel this movement taking place, and it's hard to describe. I'm sure some of you have felt it too. I can feel it. I can almost see that, oh yes, they can't come to my place now. There's something for the highest good of everybody that needs to happen before they come to my place. Do you hear what I'm saying? And what's happening in this whole process, even though the timing has not been what my human self would want, it's been divine timing. And every worker that's come in has been absolutely marvelous, and everything has been flowing, and yeah, and I've had to stretch in the process. But I'm using that as an example of I'm perceiving it differently. I'm not perceiving it as this stuff in my place is more important. You committed to being here on this day, you need to be here on this day. No, it's just like I'm trusting God's got this. And I often say at the end of prayers, God's got this, because God does have it. And because I see with that inner eye, I see something greater happening. And I don't know what it is all the time. Sometimes I get a glimpse of it. I don't know what it is all the time, but I know it's happening. So I encourage you, just for your peace of mind, for your own joy is the word I want to say now, for your own joy, surrender to Spirit. Just state to Spirit, the Spirit that is your life, that is your divine essence. See through my eyes, hear through my ears, behold the beauty of life. You'll behold beauty everywhere. Behold the perfection in every individual that you see. Behold the perfection in yourself. Behold the perfection in the world. People will think you're crazy, if you say it. A lot of people will think you're nuts. That doesn't matter. Just behold it anyway. You don't have to advertise it, but just behold it. And what you're doing then is you are making a difference on the planet. Right seeing, you see. The better to see you with, my dear, when you're allowing spirit to see through your eyes, the better to see you with, I see you clearly. I see you better, so to speak.